A very successful 4:30 workshop on the wastewater treatment plant and how we're moving forward with that. It was very informative. This is a regular city council meeting. As such, all the rules are in place, so please no talking during the proceedings. If you need to have a conversation or talk on a cell phone, please step outside because it distracts the council members as they're working. So the use of cellular phones and equipment is prohibited in the city council chambers during the meetings, except for purposes explicitly authorized by state law, Texas Government Code 551.023, which we are meeting this evening. Okay, so at this time, I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Please stand for the pledges. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Please be seated. Okay, City Secretary, we have a quorum this evening with all city council members represented in person. Proof of notice of the meeting, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The notice of this meeting was posted by 3 p.m. on Friday, January 12th.
Okay, thank you. All right, so public comments. Do we have any public comments, City Secretary?
Yes, first up, we have Alex Schmidt from Ward 5 commenting on information and discussion item number 3.
Okay, so please come to the podium. Be sure to state your name and your ward, and please keep in mind during public comments that the council members cannot respond. Okay.
My name's Alex Schmidt and I'm in Ward 5. And wish everybody a happy new year. And my husband can't be here, but we are speaking on behalf of an objection to special use permit application 2023-1107 regarding a short-term rental that's being run at 907 East Nation Street. So since mid-October, we've documented many nights of vacationers occupancy at this address. Many nights of documented occupancy, including different groups of vacationers. Now, please note that in section 20 of the City of Alpine R1 zoning, which is also called the One Family District, which governs residential site development, it says that there should be a minimum of 5 feet on the interior side yard of this house at 907 East Nation Street. In fact, there are 0 feet on the interior side yard between the 907 carport and our property, where the parking, loading, unloading, visiting, entrance, and exit activities occur for this short-term rental. We've experienced light from a vacationer's flashlight streaking through our bedroom at night, trucks and SUVs parked in front of our property for days on end, and one female traveler loading her SUV at checkout time saying, "It's 11 o'clock and we're on the road," so loud that we could hear it in our home. So for the property taxes we pay for the privilege of living in Alpine, should we be subjected to this kind of day-to-day intrusion and anxiety? Our block, our neighborhood, is composed of single families with children, individuals with disabilities and chronic health issues, and the elderly. It's not appropriate to host a short-term rental, vacation rental in this environment. Thank you.
Thank you. City Secretary.
Next up, we have Jennifer Peel, Ward 1, commenting on action item number 1.
Okay, Jennifer, come up, state your name and your ward into the microphone, and remember, council members cannot respond to you.
My name is Jennifer Peel and I'm in Ward 1. Thank you, Madam Mayor and esteemed council members, for the opportunity to introduce myself and share my interest in representing Ward 1 on the council. I first met Councilmember Stokes at my gate when she was running to represent Ward 1. During her time on the council, she's represented our ward with competence and grace. Hers are large shoes to fill, and if selected to serve in her absence, I would humbly ask that she agree to serve as a mentor. Briefly, I was not born here, but I got here as fast as I could. I was raised in North Texas, graduated from Southwestern University with a BA and TCU with a master's and PhD in psychology. More recently, I spent over 20 years in San Antonio. It was during my time in San Antonio when I fell in love with Alpine. What started out as a trip to watch my godson play football against Sul Ross turned into more frequent trips to my happy place with my large golden retriever. I purchased a home in Alpine over 4 years ago with the intent of retiring here. Then along came COVID. And I was gifted the opportunity to work remotely from Alpine permanently. So I got here even faster than I'd planned. Subsequently, I greet every day with gratitude that I can do what I love from the place that I love around the people that I love. During my time in San Antonio, I have been on the faculty of the University of Texas Health Science Center, Long School of Medicine, where I'm currently a professor and assistant dean for graduate medical education. In that role, I provide oversight of over 100 residency and fellowship programs. This unique access to young physicians is an advantage I intend to leverage to improve access to healthcare for both insured and uninsured citizens of Alpine and Brewster County. There are numerous studies that demonstrate physicians who are exposed to rural medicine during their training are more likely to return to practice in rural areas. More recently, a dose effect has been demonstrated. Simply put, the more time a resident spends in Alpine, the more likely they are to return to this area to practice. We must first get them here, and then we must figure out how to keep them here. Another primary interest of mine is making sure that the voices of Alpine are heard at the state level. To be heard, you must vote. To vote, you must register, and we must both encourage and facilitate residents of Alpine to do both. Finally, I would like to share more about working remotely from Alpine. Like our mayor, I'm an academic who is paid by an entity in another distant city, mine not as distant as yours. But I pay taxes and utilities, purchase groceries and gas, and vote in Alpine. I believe marketing Alpine as a place to both work remotely and play in the Big Bend would be advantageous for our beloved city. Thank you again for allowing me to share my background and interests. In short, I want to leave Alpine even better than I found it. It would be my honor to represent Ward 1 if the council sees fit. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, City Secretary.
Next up, we have Reagan Stone, Ward 1, commenting on action item number 1.
Okay, Reagan, into the microphone, your name, ward, and remember, council can't respond.
Name's Reagan Stone with Ward 1. Mayor Eves, council members, neighbors, friends. My name's Reagan Stone. I'm a resident of Ward 1, a local tourism business owner and a tourism marketing consultant, along with a past state legislative policy assistant. It is with great enthusiasm and a deep sense of commitment and service that I stand before you to announce my intention to ask for your nomination for the Ward 1 seat or run in a special election for the seat on the Alpine City Council. For the past few years, I've had the privilege of calling this town home, and during this time, I've witnessed the many strengths of our community. Our town is not only a place on the map leading to a big park, it's a shared tapestry of memories, culture, beauty, families, relationships, and dreams. I believe in the power of community, and I am dedicated to working to enhance the quality of life for each and every one of us. Business owners to artists, retirees to students, public servants to ranchers. As your representative on the council, my focus will be on fostering collaboration, ensuring transparency, and uniquely providing access and opportunities not represented here yet. Mayor Eves has brought a new spirit to this forum, and I intend to continue with action through the blessing of this body and my neighbors. For it is the mayor's job to lead us forward and a council's member's job to make sure that no one is left behind. We face challenges, potholed roads and aging water infrastructure, restrictions on local governance, and limited investment opportunities. I plan to bring key stakeholders, including young voices, to actually build a plan to improve our water system. I'm eager to engage with all of you members and my fellow neighbors to listen to your concerns and to bring forth solutions that reflect our collective voice. You can call me anytime on my cell, 432-294-5709, or send an email to my campaign, reaganforalpine@gmail.com. Together, we can create a vision that preserves our town's charm while embracing positive, sustainable growth. This will be the foundation of my public service. I humbly ask for your support, your trust, your vote of confidence, and opportunity to serve this community as a dedicated member of the City Council. Thank you, and I look forward to the journey ahead. This has been given to the city manager and secretary to be entered into the public record.
Thank you. Okay, City Secretary.
Last up, we have Robert Howard, Ward 4, discussing street repair relevant to information or discussion item number 7.
Okay, please state your name into the microphone, your ward, and remember, we can't respond.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Robert Howard. I'm in Ward 4. I unfortunately am only a part-time resident of Alpine. I have to split my time between here and Austin. I believe my house was the first advertised vacation rental in Alpine 15 years ago, and it's hard to believe it's been that long ago, but it's been a great time. I mainly want to just thank all of the council, mayor, and the staff for the work that you do. Sometimes I know it's thankless. Got some great candidates coming up also. Of course, Gio, Megan, Andrew, everybody does a great job. I just want to be a little bit, and by the way, I love the dark sky memos we've been getting. I mainly just want to be a little bit of a squeaky wheel and ask the council to maybe look at priorities. I've got a little personal issue, well, not personal, but an issue there at my property. You've probably all seen it. It's I think the substitute bus driver ran over the fire plug there at East Gallego and Phelps, and it's been about a year now. And so if there's anything y'all could do to give Andrew the resources he needs to address that would be most appreciated. And thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. All right, city secretary?
That concludes public comment.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, moving on to presentations, recognitions, and proclamations. There are none. Moving on to reports, city mayor report. City secretary, please put 6 minutes on the clock. Okay, so this new year has started out as a bang, a real bang. And I want council to know that I believe we have a phenomenal council who wants to move Alpine forward in the right direction and who wants to accomplish a lot. You can see that in our agenda on discussion item number 7. There's a lot of things that we want to accomplish. And I have been very impressed with how well this council works together, how we research, each of us does our research, we discuss, and then we make educated guesses. But not only that, we are each very independent individuals. So we think independently, we decide and we vote for what we each think is best after careful thought and consideration. Sometimes we all agree, sometimes we don't, and that is the beauty of democracy. And this is what's going to help to progress Alpine in a positive direction. I have mentioned my why for why I decided to run for council and why I'm here and for the decisions that I make. And more than likely, they are very similar to all of yours. I got on council to make sure that we have transparency. And over the last couple of years, with the help of council and our administration, we have more transparency than we ever have had. If you have not visited the City of Alpine website, do so. There is a lot of information on there. You can go back to 2010 and look at budgets, look at tax rates, everything. It's all there. Secondly, I wanted to increase resident involvement, and we have done that. We are improving as far as resident involvement. Our commission and board seats are full, and when a seat does become available, none of you have hesitated, council, in working to get that seat filled. I also wanted to see improvements as far as quality of life in our community, things such as childcare and a nursing home. Once I became mayor, I learned that those are really outside the scope of what the city can do. But I have joined other organizations that help us with these things, such as Alpine Community Projects. And we are working on that, on bringing a nursing home to Alpine. My concern as well, of course, is to make sure that things are done legally and correct. We know that our city charter is the rule of Alpine. However, we do realize that it is superseded by state and then federal guidelines, rules, and laws. We know that the charter needs to be updated. Hasn't been so since 2005. And as a council, we have started working on that. And I thank you guys. I thank you, council, for your hard work and dedication in doing that. And then, of course, our city administration also wants to make sure we follow things legally, and they do an excellent job. Our city secretary, Gio Calderon, will have his Texas Registered Municipal Clerk certification from the University of North Texas very soon. He takes his last test January 26th of 2024. And I wish you luck, although I know you won't need it. He will be the most highly trained and certified of any city secretary that the city of Alpine has ever had. And we are grateful.
Thank you.
Gio reaches out to the Secretary of State when needed to make sure we are following the law. In your council packets this evening, you will see evidence of such when we get to action item number 1. As far as filling the vacancy of Ward 1, we need to make sure we follow what the Secretary of State said in that email. I know no one doubts that. Something else we need to make sure that we tread carefully on is discussion item number 6 regarding Ward 2. We do have an election coming up in May, and that makes this situation sticky. We don't want to favor one person over another or vice versa. We don't want to favor a new candidate over a sitting council member who may choose to run, or vice versa, a sitting council member over a new candidate who wants to run. We had to keep in mind there's no paperwork showing what ward the area was annexed into. The city manager and secretary have been and continue to do a diligent search in this matter. They have spent countless hours. Thank you. I'm grateful. The determination came from the Brewster County Elections Administration years ago, is what it appears, as to what ward it is in. When looking at the ward map, we should consider, should the ward be contiguous or should it be direction-based, north and south, east and west? And also, we have learned that whenever there's an annexation in the future, that we need to list what ward it's being annexed into. And then finally, I would like to address the theorem that we shouldn't do something for one person. I believe this is fundamentally flawed. Often one person discovers an issue, brings it forward, and change is made or not made. The change ultimately will affect more than one person as we move through the future. Think of precedents. How are precedents set? Considering things for one individual is not uniquely Alpine. It is commonplace in a democracy. Let's think nationally. Think about the big cases. Brown versus Board of Education, Dred Scott versus Heller, Roe versus Wade, Marbury versus Madison, Tinker versus Des Moines, and so forth. Keep up the great work, council and administration. Alpine does have a bright future ahead. Tonight appears to be a very long meeting, council, with the executive session. And of course, we had the 4:30 workshop. I used my discretionary funds and purchased some sandwiches, council, for you to enjoy this evening. They are in the kitchen. I appreciate you and all of your hard work for all of our homes. Alpine. All right. Thank you, City Secretary. Okay, no city attorney report. City manager will discuss as part of information discussion item number 7. No city staff updates, no public hearings. Let's move on to consent agenda. City Secretary.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight's consent agenda contains 2 items. Item 1, approval of January 2nd, 2024 regular meeting minutes. And item 2, approval of the excused absence of Councilor Sandate from the January 2nd, 2024 city council meeting due to a family vacation.
I need a motion.
To approve the consent agenda as presented.
I need a second.
I'd like to actually pull out the first part of that, the minutes, and just to make the amendment, a small amendment in it.
Okay,
I believe the workshop listed Councilmember Chris Rodriguez at that workshop, and she did not attend the workshop. She did attend the council meeting.
okay. So we're going to remove item number 1 and we're going to consider item number 2, but I need a second to consider item number 2.
I'll second.
Okay, I need a vote. We're just looking at item number 2, approval of the excused absence of Councilmember Sandate from the January 2nd, 2024 city council meeting due to family vacation. All in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, City Secretary, the 4 council members, Sandate has excused himself from voting on that, have approved that item. All right, now let's move on to item number 1 of the consent agenda. Councilmember Nance.
Yeah, just wanted to pull that one just to make that small change about the attendees for the workshop with listing Chris Rodriguez. It's not there.
Okay,
That was it.
all right. City Secretary?
And if you could just make a motion to that effect.
Okay, I'll make a motion to accept consent agenda item 1 with the amendment changing Chris Rodriguez attendance at the workshop, removing that.
Okay, I need a second to that.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, City Secretary, all council members have voted in favor of that with the amendment. Information discussion items. Okay, the first one up is mine. Discuss the draft nonprofit donation policy for organizations such as the Alpine Public Library, Family Crisis Center, Sunshine House, Child Advocacy, and etc. So we currently do not have a policy. Is that correct, City Manager? Okay, and we've been looking at putting one into place as to how we do this in order to make it more fair. And in our packets, we do have some information on that, yes. So there is a draft one that I typed up for us to look at just as a basis, just as a scaffold for what we might want to put together. Not that it is supposed to be the end all. Okay, so any comments on that? Councilmember Stokes?
Got 75 residents on there, and I know a lot of them do. You know, only because I'm on the crisis center board, I can tell you right now, that is a fluctuating number, and they're not all in this county. Remember, they serve other counties also.
Mhm.
So I don't know whether we want to put a number in there.
Okay,
I mean, because they're just as deserving as the Sunshine House, who feeds 45,000 people. I mean,
right.
that's my
Right.
point.
And that's interesting because I did highlight that because I figured that might be an item we wanted to discuss.
I mean, we know the library does. How
Yeah,
many people you got coming in the library? 1 million, 2 million,
Yeah.
a lot.
3 million. Yeah.
Something like that.
3 million. But I think that does limit right off the bat, the crisis center,
Okay,
right off the get-go. I don't know whether, I don't know.
if we want a number or not. Okay, Councilmember Rodriguez, your thoughts?
I think I'd like to see more detail on the criteria that funding request should align with the city's priorities and community needs. That can be taken in numerous ways, and I think we should be a little bit more detailed on that.
What would you like to see added? Any thoughts?
Well, I mean, the way you put that, our priorities and our needs are constantly changing. I guess what it comes down to is that I'm reluctant on some of this, on this nonprofit donation to begin with. I have felt for quite a while that the city has a lot of needs that need to be met. And I do realize that all these groups and associations put in a lot of work. They provide a lot of services to Alpine. The city of Alpine provides essential services. And right now our need is pretty big. So I guess I would like to have it be a little bit more strict, and I guess the amount that we spent to give to these associations, not quite as high as it has been.
Okay. Councilmember Nance?
I guess a couple of things I had a question on was, in there, I think it said registered, and the question is that only 501c3 and 501c7? I guess they have to be registered nonprofits.
Right.
So I do like that clarification. My overall view of this is that I love that it's more transparent. It scares me that I think nonprofits, their finances, it scares me to inject volatility into their budget and their financial matters on that from a yearly basis. So whatever we do, I think if we did something, we should move very slow on that. I talked to Megan a little bit about it, and over the 10 years, she said that they've really been not a large increase, about 55,000 to 60,000. And that's the 5,000 that increase went over to the library. So even over 10 years, they've made do without large increases. Here's one thing I was going to mention. Coming back, and I think that it's interesting from the county, did a little bit of research on this, and some state funding runs through counties and does not run through municipal governments or anything, community development block grants, camp, things like that. So the ways that the county might be able to work with nonprofits that we can't. Perhaps that's something in there. And the last one is, if it wasn't money, if we could actually move in other ways as far as just giving them meeting space, lack of permits. Talked to Megan, she mentioned one that I thought was very interesting, maybe discounted gas rates, discounted water or something like that that we could put within an ordinance. What scares me about this is that I don't think with all the other problems that we actually have, I don't think this is a current priority with some of the other things. So I think we could focus on some other things and keep this on the burner. So keep it moving forward, but not to prioritize it.
Councilmember Sandate?
The library provides a lot of services to the community. And if the funding's there and the budget, I'm for it.
Councilmember Stevens?
So, one, the not-for-profits provide a lot of support to those in Alpine in need. So I do believe it's appropriate for the city to allocate revenue for not-for-profits. I think the way to handle it is during our normal budget cycle. And in my view, we ought to talk about when we get to the budget cycle, which is going to come sooner than later. But that's probably the time to talk about it. I think the second part of it is, as part of that, we ought to talk about what's the total funding we want to allocate. So we put, it's a line item in the budget.
Right.
Okay, and we look and say, here's where it's at. I know there's some state requirements we have to comply with. I know Megan's helped us make sure we think about, it's got to be for public benefit. So I think as part of this process, we're going to need to certify that. And I would bring this back up when we get ready to dive in the budget process and make it part of our workshops.
So do you think it's appropriate to draft a policy at that time, or do we need a policy prior to beginning the budget talks?
My view, I think we can probably spend the time when we get to the budget cycle, as evidenced by item number 7 of our information discussion. We got a lot of stuff to work our way through. We all have different priorities, but I would make it part of the budget process is where I would consider that. That gives us time to go work the other items that in my view are more important. This isn't an issue we have to work now. We certainly have to get it worked prior to 30 September. And as I do as part of the budget cycle.
Councilmember Sandate? Councilmember Nance?
I agree with, I think that's good to have it for the budget cycle. And then I think if we err on the side of simplicity, I like whatever we can do to make things simple.
Councilmember Rodriguez?
I totally agree. I think it would make it a little bit more feasible if we know what at least we're talking about. And during the budget season, we'll be able to have a bigger picture of what funds are going to be available.
Okay, Councilmember Stokes? Yeah.
Good.
It's good.
Whatever y'all want to do.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, let's move on to discussion item number 2. Okay, discuss the draft tax abatement policy for historic renovations. And the city manager brought to our attention that we had already had a policy from 1996, 98. And so that has been included in your packet along with another scaffold from which we can look at. Now this may come up sooner rather than later, since we do have a request already that the council has been considering regarding the Holland Hotel and their historic renovations. All right, so Councilmember Stokes.
I didn't read any of it, so.
Okay.
I didn't.
Okay, we'd love your honesty.
You know, I think it's good to give these historic buildings something. I do think we need to, once again, remember that when you give I don't know how many hotel motels we have in Alpine. I know we have one in a historic building. When you go to giving him something, then you're gonna have everybody else go, well, just because I'm not in a historic building, why am I not getting a break? And I think that's a valid issue because they bring in just as much hot money as the Holland Hotel is going to. That's the only problem I have with it. I don't mind them doing it. I don't mind them making it beautiful. It'll be great. It'll be gorgeous. But do we want to reward them for coming out here and doing that and not reward Holiday Inn because they built a whole building?
So I believe the group that came and presented to council is looking at for multiple tax abatements. The one that's an ordinance is for property tax. It would be a tax rate on the property based off of the.
I didn't read any of it, but
It's one.
The second one they've inquired about was actual not having to pay their
Right.
hot taxes and having not a free, but basically a forgiveness, so they could reinvest it. The last conversation with them regarded them as far as, did they go to the school district? Did they go to the county? Or are they just looking at the city? Because it doesn't affect just us. It's the other entities as well. So they're
Had they
looking at-
gone to everybody else?
I can't answer that. Like I said, this is the ordinance, so this wouldn't be a resolution. You would have to amend the ordinance. You can't put a resolution in place with a policy because this would supersede it. So we do want to look at the different angles. When you open up the hotel tax fund, you open it up to all hotels. So this one for property, it does have a historic commercial process. The hot one would have to be created, implemented. I would highly suggest by ordinance, and you would open it up to.
Councilmember Rodriguez.
I guess I have an issue with the applications. It says it can be a minimum of 5,000. And then we're looking at what, possibly 3 years. I mean, we're giving up an awful lot of tax for 3 years for somebody that can do repairs down to a minimum of 5,000.
So this is why you want to look at the ordinance
Yeah.
and possibly.
I
amended.
think the one that we have needs a lot of work on it. One of the things that's been brought up, a lot of it is, we don't have the commissions, the committees that it draws up. But I also have the concern, like, that y'all were bringing just up, that it's gonna open us up. And like Judy said, why can't the others get it too? I think we're letting go of a lot of tax money this way.
So then the consideration for council is, if you want to proceed this direction, this ties to more than just this. I mean, there's economic development obviously involved with this as well. But I think if you did relook at this one and make it a bigger impact, where obviously 5,000, maybe they have to put a much higher percentage, a much higher dollar amount. And that's all to be considered. And you take away the historic value of it and you open it up for commercial.
And they can put in new commodes for $5,000.
Yes, they can.
So this
And
was
then
written
they
in
would-
1998,
And
right?
then they would get a tax freeze for 3 years for their
Mhm.
cheaping toilets.
Right. And so since this is a current ordinance, somebody could technically apply under this, correct? So it's something we need to,
Yes.
yes, because I agree with you, 5,000 is
Nothing.
not in today's dollars.
Have you looked at other cities and what they have?
So a lot of cities, there's different terminology, but what you'll hear the most of are 380 agreements. Those are tax abatements. There is a formal contract with the city and the business that outlines a lot more than just a tax credit or a tax freeze. There's give and take on both sides. So that's something, if the council really wants to look into, we could consider putting more of that type of language. But you wouldn't have to narrow it down to historical. You could open it up for all within the city limits.
And I don't know that I like that. I mean, and I understand the reason for this historical, but there's a lot of other businesses here that put in just as much money to Alpine, that provide a bigger service, and we don't provide them with what's.
And that's where you could put the 380 and remove historical too. Historical is just added as part of this. You can put your own criterias, guidelines, and how you would like it to look. And then it would tie back with future development for the economy. Bringing in people to invest in the downtown area, or even not just the downtown, maybe the buildings more in the outskirts that want to come in and remodel.
Councilmember Nance?
I'm for this, but taking it slow. I think it's extremely complex, and I think we should probably be walked through the process and, not necessarily come up with something in-house, but there are firms in Houston, Dallas, other places that I think we could reach out and see how other cities are doing it, because I think if you look at it as well from, if we took the Holland as an example, the appraised value of the Holland's 2 million, you can only raise the value 20% under the current commercial properties value. So you're looking at 2.4 million. Theoretically, their value is going to go up if they completely renovate that whole place. So we don't have to do this fast. They could still do a historic credit or something in the future. And coming back on that, this is just a side story, but if it's already a historic building, which I don't know if it is, there's Texas Historical Commission. They could apply for credits through that as well, if it was. I am for this. I just think we've had this in here and 15% for a 3-year freeze is not a lot. I think that's why nobody's done it, because even if you had, you know, say $1 million property and that's requiring you to put $150,000 in, and it's your 3-year taxes aren't going to near recoup what you actually are being forced to invest in that. I think when we go out and we talk to an expert on all this kind of stuff, we should see if we should get the county involved as well, if they would be interested in ones, or especially the school district, because the school district is the largest tax entity in something. There's something has to be in a inducement towards the people to invest in those properties. And I don't think what's currently on the books, that's it.
Councilmember Sandate?
Is this only for commercial buildings or
Commercial historic. buildings.
historic
So
buildings?
this is a very targeted.
Okay.
Councilmember Stevens?
So like we've all talked about, this talks about historic renovations, and then, but we have on the books under the ordinance, section 90-56 is all about tax abatements. And in my mind, and partly to Darren's point, there are 3 tax abatements we're talking about potentially here: property tax, sales tax, hot tax. And that's what people want to be able to make investment. Our current ordinance is just on property tax. And the point is, if you have $1 million property, then you have to invest $150,000 before any of this takes place currently on the books. It'd certainly be nice, in my view, we need to do the business analysis, because we've had how many applications for this over the last decade?
None, right?
Zippo.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is not an incentive for anyone to do anything. And if we're gonna spend the time on it, let's spend the time getting someone to kind of walk through where are those incentives, what would cause people to do it, and therefore, how should we modify the ordinance first on commercial property? And then I'd look and say, do we want to do any benefits for historic property? I know in the case of what Byways is doing, they are going after Texas and federal historic funds, and they're off in the middle of that process right now. And I don't believe they are looking at all to this to close their business deal. And hopefully they'll get all that sorted out. So I think it needs to go on our list of something to go work. My opinion, and I'll get myself in trouble with the committee that I provide support to, and that's the HOT committee. In my view, it's probably worthwhile to have either them or P and Z take a look at this to come back with some recommendations. One, it takes it off our plate, gives it to a group, and the reason I pick HOT, because you got hotels, you got restaurants, you got commercial folks involved, get them engaged. And I would have them go pull some consultants in, spend some time to work on that. We did talk a little bit about that at our last meeting. They got some work to go do, but we're moving them from meeting annually to now meeting at least 4 times a year. I think there's an opportunity to go do that. So that's what I would propose, to get the HOT committee to go work it. They're thoughtful people, they're in business. I think they can provide us good insight and perspective.
And they have room on their plate.
They got room on their plate. Well, they may say they don't, but my sense is there's an opportunity there. So that'd be my recommendation.
And I do think
I
planning
second that.
and zoning should also review it as well.
By all means,
But
yep.
sure, we can send it to both.
Yeah, by all
Right.
means. In fact, you almost want to look and say that could be a joint activity for them to go work.
P and Z and HOT.
How's that sound, Matt?
Matt's excited. You know you're back there, don't worry.
Yeah. All right. Any other comments? Any other discussions? Okay, let's move on. All right. So moving on to discussion item number 3. This belongs to the city manager.
So this has become a discussion pretty much at every meeting. And so what I wanted to do is just serious discussion, just take a few minutes to kind of go over where we're at, the direction we want to go, and kind of putting in some clarifications. So when this policy or ordinance came into play, there was a very strong understanding that we all wanted to work to get everyone compliant. To the point where we even gave those who were in compliance a discount. They didn't pay the full permit fee because, you know, they were in compliance. Those who weren't in compliance, we worked with them to, you know, get them into compliance. If you go through the actual ordinance and you look at I call them consequences or the enforcement side of it, the enforcement isn't very deep. It doesn't give you kind of a step by step. One thing I know I've talked to you about, and also the council member Stevens, is our notification process. We've been working with STRs despite the fact that they haven't been compliant to get them compliant. Now it's been brought back with, well, if they're not compliant, cite them and move on. So, but if they're working through the application process to become compliant, and then we're citing them at the same time, kind of a contradiction here. Well, we're trying, you're gonna work with us, you're not gonna work with us, you're gonna cite us, you're not gonna work with us. Council approves it, council doesn't approve it. We have concerns with delinquency. Are they paying? Are they not paying? Are they getting their permits in a timely manner? Are they renewing within the 30 days prior to the expiration? The application process itself, is there a way to better streamline that? Ideally today, we just heard about some of the zoning requirements. Well, you guys are also looking at all of the zoning ordinances, and those are things that are being updated currently that can affect this ordinance as well. I'd like there to be more of a denial process. If there's a denial process, to me, that's okay. You have to stop right then and there. You can no longer continue to operate. And we give them a time frame, maybe outline that process as well. There are parking concerns in regards to how many parking spaces. I understand the need to restrict, but we also look at our zoning. Zoning also has parking restrictions. We're trying to get that updated and looked at. That affects everyone, not just STRs, or do we call STRs out differently? Or does it apply to all of those zones? And then are we gonna regulate our residents in parking on the street, not on the street, vegetation, not on the vegetation? All discussions we're gonna have, which were initiated with Andrew Devaney, our building official, with that conversation. And then one of the things that I know Gio and I have discussed is we'd like to take it out of taxation. STRs are businesses, and we'd like to move this into the business side of our ordinances and not under our taxation side of it. They are operating a business, not a big issue right now. But I would like for us to start to think about making the changes. The reason why I brought this up specifically and separated it out was when you go through this ordinance and you look at certain things, we're updating our zones. We're updating, or we just changed our R1s to allow for beauty salons. We're looking at the M1 and what's allowable and not allowable. That will affect STRs. So I think some of the changes we're making have a bigger impact on other ordinances as well. So I'd like us to take that into consideration. I'd like there to have a more outlined enforcement. I think it's hard to go, we're working with everyone, to we're no longer, and you're gonna get cited right off the bat. I think there needs to be some additional conversation. We are in compliance with trying to maintain everything that the state allows and not allows us to do. But I think over the past probably 6 months, this has been an item of discussion every meeting. So I'd really like us to move this one kind of to the top of our list as far as ordinances to clean up, because we do have that growing impact of STRs. I say growing, but I think it just kind of, we have like 4 leave and we have 4 come back in. So you kind of have that fluctuation. And I know that each of you have your own concerns. I know that, you know, people have issues with the noise, but are they actually filing the complaint? If a complaint's not filed, the police department can't keep a record and we can't enforce our ordinance that says an STR must be in compliance with all other city ordinances. So I think there's a lot we can discuss, a lot of procedural things that we could clarify and put in here. I just wanted to bring it back up to council so that you guys are aware that you guys have been talking about it more and more and more and more. And it does have an impact. We do have, last I checked, we had 87, about 87 STRs in the city limits. Jill, and Heather Yaden doing a great job trying to track him down. I think we just need to address the gray zone. If we're not gonna work anymore and we catch them in operation, then we cite them automatically. We don't send me, hey, we noticed you're operating as an STR, you need to get your permit. We send you're being notified of a citation. But I'd like to get more of the council feedback. Is this an ordinance we need to go ahead and start knocking out now? Utilizing our city attorneys in other cities, and cleaning it up a little bit.
Okay, a couple of questions. So when was this one written?
2021.
2021. Yeah, I noticed that there was a deadline for April something of 2021. And second, there have been a lot of changes, a lot of court cases and so forth in the state of Texas regarding what cities can and can't do regarding STRs and what we can and can't regulate. How does this ordinance currently stack up with what has changed?
So we've had that conversation with our attorneys and we are currently in compliance.
Okay, good. So everything in here is currently in compliance. All right, Councilmember Stokes.
You know, we have talked about it every meeting, just like this woman, you know, I don't want them at my back door either. I don't want a bunch of people I don't know at my back door at 11 o'clock in the morning loading a Suburban. But by law, we can't stop. I do think that enough has been in every newspaper, Facebook, up here, Dallas, Houston. I think if somebody's operating one and they haven't applied for a permit, you give them a citation. They all know they've got to do something. If they may not know what it is, but they know they need to call somebody and say, you know, we're going to put in a short-term rental in our house we own in Alpine. Do we have to do anything? They all know that. They can act innocent all they want. They all know that. Give them a ticket right off the bat. And then they'll go, boy, maybe we ought to read that. Jill, could you send me that so we can be in compliance with the city? And I think that would stop a lot of this. But you've got these people who come in and they go, we're just going to do that. It's Podunk Alpine. They don't know what they're doing. They're not going to, they'll work with us. And don't work with them anymore. Tell them, no, we're not working with you here. Pay us $500 and now meet all this. And then send somebody out to check it all. You know, if they're in my alley, I guarantee you, I'm going to be out there every day. Shut up. Go home.
You can call in Daryl, right?
You dang right.
Yeah, Daryl.
Here, let me get my phone. And Megan.
Yeah.
You know, so I just think they should be held accountable, just like everybody else is held accountable. If I have a loud party at my house like I do all the time, and Ross and Debbie call, I should be made to turn my stuff down. I know I can't do that. And they all know. They all act innocent when they come in here and they talk to Gio. Oh, I didn't know we were supposed to do that. They all know that. They've got them in other towns. They know that there's an ordinance somewhere. And if they don't, then they need to find out and pay for it. And that, you know, would just help our little coffers. And it's not illegal to do. I think it would make us more accountable. It would make the citizens realize that we are doing something. You know, when we go, oh, well, we're working with them, you know, for 5 months. Y'all have had people in this house. That's not working with somebody. Don't work with them anymore. And that's my opinion of that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Rodriguez.
I would like to see us work on this pretty soon. I think our views have changed. Before we were focused on just getting everybody to do the application and to get all their paperwork in and all that. I think we need to change the route that we're taking, and I think we need to look a little bit more at enforcing what we can and do have a way to take care of.
Councilmember Nance.
I agree. I think it would be beneficial on the STR owner side and the city side if there was just clarity. And when you work with somebody for 5 months or whatever else, and we're trying to work through the process with them, you're ultimately just creating a culture of non-compliance because there's no deadline or terminus to getting this actually done.
That's what I was trying to say.
Yes,
There you go.
we got
And,
it. We understood.
Darren.
if that is details and teeth that are needed within the ordinance structure or whatever else like that, maybe that's a P&Z thing or buildings and standards. I don't know, but back to kind of what Rick had mentioned with the previous point, somebody to write that language with the city's help to kind of clarify and then codify what we all want. I think it would be better for both parties to kind of have that clarity of what is right and wrong. And I think just the last thing is, I always kind of just treat it like a speeding ticket. You can go out and you can speed. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get caught every time. You gotta be driving by Darrell to get caught. And so there may be times when these people, STR owners, they may rent the house out. You're not going to catch them 100% time. I don't think we expect to catch them 100% time, but it's good to have the clarity of the law saying that this is the law and this was a time when it was broken. And here's the clarification of a $200, $400, $500, $600 fine, whatever all that is.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Sandate?
How is the parking issues coming along? Are they getting better or?
So you have multiple STRs that are currently unpermitted that are technically operating because of parking issues. So this is one thing that I know our building official, Andrew Devaney's been working on, is cleaning that up. A lot of the houses that are becoming STRs weren't traditionally designed with maybe parking areas or a driveway. And so they're utilizing whatever space they kind of have available. The way the ordinance currently reads also says that they have to have one for not only every sleeping area, but the 500 square feet. So my house, I would have to technically have 3 parking spaces. I don't have a driveway. I don't have a parking area. So I park pretty much on the street, literally. So to be an STR, I would never call it based on the parking itself. So a lot of the STRs that are starting to come in are having to modify to meet the parking. So we're trying to compromise and accommodate and make it more reasonable for both. But for the most part, a lot of them are parking on the street. I know that there's been the big issue. I think Councilor Rodriguez had mentioned it. Well, what if they have a huge party? You know, I rent a house for a college graduation and you have 30 people having a party. Those are things that the noise ordinance would regulate. And if neighbors are upset, they file that complaint and the records start to build, because that's how we can come back and say, okay, you've had 5 noise complaints. We're having to pull your permit.
Okay. Councilmember Stevens?
I believe that property owners have the rights they're entitled to with their property. Both those who choose to live in a residence and both those who choose to rent out their property as a short-term rental. We put an ordinance in place that we are not following. The ordinance is fairly straightforward. It says section 90-136 penalty. Any person, firm, or corporation violating any provisions of the article shall be deemed guilty of a misdemeanor, and upon conviction thereof shall be fined in a sum not to exceed $2,000, and a separate offense shall be deemed committed upon each day during or on which a violation occurs or continues. I believe the ordinance has enough teeth in it for there to be compliance. There are many, as Megan pointed out, and I've seen short-term rentals that basically said, hey, life's good. We're making money. We are making money. And we have not been fined. And the city's not going to fine us. And this ordinance has been around. You know, it goes back to the ordinance was put in place in January of 2021 and gave a grace period till April 1st of 2021. And we've not done anything. So in my opinion, it's time to say grace period's over. It's been long enough. Because those who look to us to say, would you please comply? We are not following the law that we put in place. And I don't think it's fair to the property owners who have to live with the short-term rentals who are not compliance. I get parking spaces and all the other issues, to Megan's point, to run a business. You want to run a business, you got to comply with the business laws and the requirements. So I'm in favor of put notice out, read the ordinance. If you're not compliant, we're going to cite you. You can take it up with the judge and sort your way through. And certainly there are the questions about parking spaces. Is there enough or not enough? We can certainly go ahead and modify it, but until such time as that works its way through, we're gonna follow the ordinance.
But I don't think it's fair to the ones who are
Right.
following the ordinance.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, the majority are following the ordinance. There's the problem. It's the new ones who say, oh, the ordinance says I have to have 3 spaces and run a 2-car garage, doesn't matter. I'm just gonna use it anyway. And I know.
We'll
it's
park up
being-
on the
it's being
grass.
rented out. Parking on the grass, parking on whatever.
Yeah.
To Daryl's point, if we don't require compliance, we can never get compliance. And there are, like all things, there's a minority of short-term rental owners who are not compliant, who are not being fined, who feel no accountability, and all that does is breed more than not being compliant. So anyway, that's my view. It's time to start rolling and we get Daryl and, you know, I don't know all the details in terms of, you know, there can be a warning. But in my view, to the point that's been raised already, there are several that they're out there blatant and they're renting out like mad and they're making money. So come on, gang, comply. It's that simple. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Okay.
Go comply.
Any other comments from the council?
I was gonna ask, when they pick up an STR packet, are they knowledgeable of up to a $2,000 fine? Do we make it apparent to them that, hey, guys, you cannot operate without a permit, the fine could be up to $2,000, or could they, claim ignorance? Like, that wasn't within the packet. I have to go out and hunt the ordinance and read the ordinances, because we know that's probably not gonna happen. If we're gonna work with them in that regard, I really want it in their face that that there's a simple line of legality and illegality, and that could be in the packet. And I was gonna say, coming back on it, that I think I'm not anti-STR. I think STRs are just businesses, quite simply. And I mean, so I would be for a more lax or accommodating policy so that they can operate. I think it's just, we want to work with them because they do provide HOT and other income back into the city. So if we are going to be lax to allow them to operate, then we're getting the benefit of the clarity of when you don't operate, it's very well and apparent that this is the law.
All right. City manager, any final thoughts?
You get all that?
I got it all in
Good.
their tiny handwriting. I think there is room for improvement. I do like the clear, concise conversation we just had with Simon. Pretty much everyone's on board with that. I do think that we do need to do a better job educating them. So that, like you said, it's not ignorance, it's, you just blatantly don't want to follow compliance. I think that this will be brought back up before council with some proposed changes. I would like to put clarification on deadlines. I think that makes it easier for law enforcement, for code enforcement, and for the judge. That on this date they were notified, on this date they continued, we cited them.
My struggle, Megan, there are people who know today they are not compliant.
We know of, I believe we kind of just had a side conversation that are 5.
Yeah, and my reaction is,
Right.
hey, 5, you're non-compliant. Wouldn't wait to say, we're gonna now coddle you along.
Oh, no, we're moving forward with.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that's what they've been doing, is coddling.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
So,
Stop
like I
coddling.
said, clear direction, cite them, but at the same time, we work this, fixing it up, especially with the parking.
Yeah,
I do want to address some of the zoning things, and then we move forward.
Andrew has wonderful paperwork that he has been using at Building and Standards. It outlines what you just said. He puts in when the notice was given, the date, the time, who gave it, how much time they were given. Get with him and I think he already has that set up and I think that
So-
would be.
Code enforcement is the one who follows through.
It's not fair to the neighbors of the 5. That's the issue.
Planning and zoning will actually be considering the draft proposed ordinance that was presented to you all for discussion on December 5th. Here on January 22nd. So it's going to go as y'all saw it. To be considered by them and for them to make an official recommendation on the parking.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Okay, any other discussion on this item? All right, let's move forward. Discussion item number 4. This belongs to Councilmember Nance.
So on that one, all I was gonna mention was Parks Board's doing awesome. I like all the members. It's really a good group of people. And we had a great meeting. And in that meeting, we looked at resolution 2022-1103. Basically, in November, I believe Megan, Gio, and the council members at that time gave 9 tasks to the Parks Board. I was on the Parks Board part of that time. We worked our way through some of them, did not finish all of them. Some of them are pretty big projects to lift. So the Parks Board got together and clarified 5 projects that we're going to work on until October. Those are going to be ordinance review. So, and Parks Board will split some of these up. So they'll work through these and then give a status update as well back to council. But the projects to do are ordinance review. So they're going to go through every single ordinance under, is it chapter 74 for Parks and Recreation? Park rules, updating, clarifying park rules so they're standardized, festivals and event permitting, rental fees, updating that one for the Civic Center that we had discussed. And the final one would be reporting. So really, I just was going to let everyone know. I'll work to basically just create a resolution with Gio or Megan, update the resolution 2022-1103, take out the old ones, do the new ones, and we'll work from there. And I guess I was just going to see if out of those 5 projects, was there anything you want us to take to the Parks Board? The feedback that y'all had on those 5 projects?
So you had ordinance review, you had Civic Center, what else?
Ordinance review, park rules,
Park rules.
festivals and event permitting, rental fees, and just reporting.
Well, didn't the uniform rules and the fees already go back to them?
Mostly the fees was, we raised the fee for Coconut Pavilion. And then we had questions, I think council had questions on the Civic Center about how long they can rent it for and everything. So we'll get clarity on that.
The additional
We have-
fee for the Dollar Tree that hasn't been approved.
Did we ever get clarity on, I know there was a lot of talk about whether on the pavilion, if there were half-day rentals or not. Did we ever do that?
I think we approved that.
Yes, it was approved for half days. So you have a morning fee and you have
And
an
an evening.
afternoon fee and an all day.
Okay, Councilmember Stevens, you had your finger.
Just question, what's gonna happen to the 2,000 square foot awning we took off the library?
That is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
You can-
Dog park.
Dog park.
Dog park.
Yeah.
So little miscommunication. I thought it was at the yard. But Mr. Acosta confirmed that he actually has it.
Almost got it, yep.
Yes, so I have his number and we're gonna get together and he just needs the concrete more than anything.
Yep.
And they'll install it. So I'll work back with Eddie and David Martinez.
Great. Yeah. 'Cause he'll do it.
I thought Parks had it.
No, no, we took it to the interim, so I filled it making money, the funds keep the concrete under.
Thank you for kicking that off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, council, any other comments, discussion? All right, let's move on to discussion item number 5. City
Miss-
manager.
Mr. Hummel reached out and wanted to do an update on the Dark Skies initiative. Currently, the city is sending out friendly reminders to residents and commercial owners of the compliance that will be required by 2026. And so he's gonna bring us a quick update.
Hi,
Thanks.
thank you for
Yeah.
coming.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. Yeah, so as Megan mentioned, thank you for the reminders sent out to residents, but yeah, in 2021, the council updated its outdoor lighting ordinance, and within that ordinance, there was a 5-year sunset clause. So that would bring it to May 2026. So in other words, we're about halfway through that 5-year kind of grace period. So since that time, I do want to note that the Dark Sky Initiative in the area, as was particularly in Alpine, has received a tremendous amount of media attention. As we have a documentary crew here today. And we also in the past year have had CBS News do a national news segment on dark skies in this area. Just last week, I met with the Weather Channel and they're doing a segment. The University of Texas Media Center estimates that all of these various media reports have been seen by at least 1.5 million people around the country. So there's a lot of attention, particularly on the city of Alpine and what they're doing in terms of dark skies. And 4 other cities in Texas have adopted essentially the same language that Alpine did in 21 since then. So it's catching on outside of the Big Bend region as well. But if you go to the next, oh, I have a slide, right? That's right. There we go. So with the help of some volunteers, I'm gonna name them, Ryan Cantrell, Laura Gold, Shauna Graves, and Crystal Campos, they helped me put together a map of the lighting in the city that's on AEP poles, city poles, so just city lighting essentially. And on that map, you can kind of see if it's green, it's compliant, it's red, it's not, and it's going to come through a little better on the screen as opposed to on paper. But about of the 657 lights surveyed, overall, 81% were compliant, but that does include things like backyard lights that are on AEP poles. So I counted everything on an AEP pole. If you only count the lights that the city is responsible for, 90% are compliant, which is pretty good. One of the goals that internally we set back in 21 was 90% compliance for public lighting within 5 years. So we beat that 2.5 years ahead of time. So I think it's excellent. So of course, the largest part of that is due to the support of Big Bend Conservation Alliance. So I would want to clarify that this inventory is independent of their efforts. So you can see on the map as well, I'm going to pick this one because it's close, it's got a laser. Most of the non-compliant lights are on the southern side of town, and most of those are mercury vapor lights that are eligible for this, or were eligible for the swap program that BBC operated. So we got some of them, but not all of them. That's the majority. A lot of the other ones, you can see there's a cluster right in the middle of town. Those are the sort of the acorn style lights that were what we call Main Street lights. So TxDOT calls them. Those are, I will say, though technically non-compliant, not a huge concern. They do contain a baffle that directs the light downward, and they are mostly amber. But technically, they are not fully shielded, thus they do not actually meet full standards of the ordinance. But I want to note also, although I did not do a formal survey, I did not go out asking everyone. In my role, I do get a lot of community feedback. I'm talking to people about lighting almost every day, so understandably, I hear what they have to say. I have not personally heard any safety concerns around the new street lights that were installed last year in the new updates. Now that isn't super surprising because most of the lights that were installed were the same model as what was previously there in most of the cases. They had 6 complaints that the new lights were too bright. That also to me isn't very surprising because many of the lights that have been replaced lights that had been there over a decade. And they're not only dirty, but they're starting to burn out, or some of them weren't functioning at all. So even if they were replaced with the same exact model, that same exact model is going to be shiny and new and thus brighter. So suddenly your front yard looks a lot brighter because they got the dirt off the fixture. That's the case in some of them. But yeah, that I did not notice. I did not hear any complaints that any of the lights were too dim. That I think is noteworthy because on the main thoroughfares through town, those lights used to be 250 watt fixtures. Now they are 70 watt fixtures. They're actually much dimmer. Did anyone notice that?
No.
No.
I didn't.
No. Yeah, no one notices because this is theoretically I knew, but it's nice to have a real world example. What determines visibility isn't necessarily the brightness of the light, but the distribution and the contrast the light creates. Because your eye will adjust to the ambient levels. Just because the light is brighter doesn't mean you're seeing them better. We also had 4 complaints that lights were installed incorrectly. Those have all, I believe, been resolved by AEP, but some of them were tilted up or weren't screwed in quite right, and funny things happened. But I believe those have all been rectified. So the city swapped out many lights last year. Now the big question, is it any darker? Has the night sky actually gotten darker? Well, this is maybe somewhat disappointing, but the answer is no, it's pretty much exactly the same. Why is it exactly the same? Well, many of the old lights were dirty and dim. We reduced the brightness of some, we fixed some, but overall, the average light is a little bit brighter. It's still pretty good, but those two things kind of cancel each other out. And again, most of the lights that were replaced with identical fixtures. So I think the real measure of success isn't did it get darker, but are we preventing light pollution from increasing? And then viewed from that perspective, the city has been successful light pollution has not increased significantly since the new lights were installed. So to come up with that, I took measurements 6 months ahead of the swap and 6 months after the swap that occurred in July of last year, June, July, and that compared the two. So over time, I do expect it to get darker again as the new lights start to fade with age, and then maybe we will actually have slightly darker skies overall. And there's also just factors with measurements. The weather has been different, and then things like car headlights and traffic and all of that throws off measurements of darkness. So there could be other variables too. But the real reason that light pollution in Alpine is mostly unchanged is that the streetlights, generally speaking, were never the problem. And that's something that we've learned by changing the streetlights. We changed the variable. The overall result didn't change very much. That tells us the real problem wasn't really the streetlights. By my estimate, based on satellite data, photography from on top Hancock Hill and other high points, measurements from McDonald Observatory, and other data, streetlights probably account for 15% of the overall glow over the city, which is relatively low, right? That's maybe, even though they're the most numerous kind of light, they only account for 15% because they're for the most part compliant and well designed and doing a good job. Most of the light then is from commercial businesses. That's the main source of light pollution in Alpine. So this is on top Hancock Hill. I'm not going to name any businesses or anything here. That's not why I'm here. I want to work with people. I'm not here to publicly shame anyone. But generally speaking, about 75% of the sky glow or the washing out of the stars in Alpine is caused by stadiums. Not a surprise, really. Parking lots, other commercial lighting, business signs, things of that nature. And the remaining 10%, if you're doing the math in your head, would be residential lighting. So that tells us that that's probably where our attention needs to go, is the commercial lighting. That's where my attention is heading right now, is working with the local businesses on adopting better lighting practices, hopefully sooner rather than later, rather than waiting to the last minute 2.5 years from now. So I also want to compare how Alpine's doing to some other cities really quickly. So using satellite data and our ground-based data we've collected since 2015, Alpine overall has been increasing in light pollution by about 0.8% per year. That's 20% cumulative. So 20%, 0.8% on top of that, that is not bad. Marfa, for comparison, has actually been getting darker by almost 1% per year. I don't actually have a good answer as to why. I was surprised by that result. Van Horn, a little smaller, but that's been getting brighter, 3.9%. Pecos 5.5%, Presidio, Ojinaga 8% brighter each year. The North American average as a whole is 9.8% brighter each year. Or in other words, that's doubling in brightness in 8 years. That's the pace of light pollution in North America as a whole. So compared to that, we are performing excellent. We're doing great compared to the national average. And the main reason why the national average is so incredibly high, why it's doubling in 8 years, is mostly due to white LEDs. As you see in the picture here, parking lots with daylight white LEDs, street lighting of that color is driving that increase. And Alpine elected to not install LEDs of that nature, which is why we are not in the same boat as most of the rest of the country. So it's, I just want to close by saying Alpine, it may seem like no progress is being made. It may seem like it's an uphill battle. It certainly feels that way to me when I look at all the lights I still need to fix. But overall, Alpine is doing excellent, and I think that the international attention it's received is well deserved. So thank you.
Okay. Council, any questions, comments? Steve?
Really appreciate your approach of being non-confrontational with people, trying to motivate them in the right direction. What can we do to help you in the hardest area you've got right now, and that's the commercial business?
Getting the word out. That I can talk to people, but they need to hear it from multiple voices. And I'm the same way when I have to do chores, like I gotta hear it multiple times, right? And I have to do something I don't want to do. So that I think is the most impactful thing you could do I truly believe the problem is awareness, right? It's just a matter of getting the word out. And in cases where the problem isn't awareness but resources, I try to help wherever I can, and there are other people who try to help in that regard as well. We have a small fund set up called the Dark Sky Initiative Fund at McDonald Observatory, which can go for certain applications where they demonstrate hardship, or if it serves the public interest, we can donate light fixtures. But really, I think the real problem is awareness.
So if a business says, hey, I'd like some help to evaluate, who do they call?
You can call me. You can, if you ever need any kind of assistance. I like to say I'm a state employee, right? I work for McDonald Observatory for UT, but I'm in a way a free consultant. I'm happy to lend advice to whoever who will listen to me, and I'll never charge anything. So, and I will never, as an aside, I will never report a violation because I need to maintain a working relationship, and if they see me as the person who gets you in trouble, then no one's going to work with me. So yeah, you'll never hear from me that so and so has bad lighting. Please do something about it, because that's not my role.
And he'll come out. I called you to come out with the new Dollar General.
Yes.
Stephen has worked with our building services department, several night trips to
Yes.
verify. I think West Texas at one point may have reached out to you. So he's been really resourceful and helpful.
Absolutely.
Yes.
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 It wasn't too late. I met him there and it wasn't too late.
They do drive around at night.
And
Any
I
other
think as
questions?
we get closer to the deadline, I know last year we sent out all commercial properties registered with the CAT, a polite reminder. This year we sent out to all the residents a polite reminder that deadline is coming. I know one thing coming up as we get closer, we'll start working more with big corporate companies that are selling the light fixtures that aren't compliant, that people like to buy, that will obviously create some headache down the road.
But I'm gonna go walk the east side, cause I'm part of 5 down Highway 90, 6790, and just start talking to people.
That's great. Yeah, I encourage it. And thank you.
Have larger entities like Soros, the school district and all them reached out for help as far as the football field and all the lighting that they have?
They have not specifically reached out for help. No, I have had conversations with Soros in the school district. The new lighting at the Alpine High School was done well with our input. That was Bill Wren before me in Block Project. And I have been in contact, but they haven't specifically reached out to me for help.
Any other comments, questions? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen. It was very informative. Thank you. Hey, and at this point, we're going to take a 10-minute break. So we are back from recess.
One second, let's.
Oh.
Oh, no, perfect. Go ahead.
Recording.
Yes, it is recording.
Okay.
I just wanted to be sure.
All right, so we are back from recess. We are to discussion item number 6, which belongs to the city manager.
Y'all think I'm.
No
bad.
stress.
Okay, so it was recently brought to the city's attention, some inconsistencies with an annexation involving Ward 2 and possibly Ward 3. As part of this, just a little background. We have an individual who's interested, who assumed he was in, or she was in Ward 2. Then upon looking at their voter registration card, it indicated Ward 3. Geo immediately contacted the elections administrator to verify. We also immediately contacted the city attorney's office to determine the process and what we needed to do. In your packets was included the ward map, as well as the annexation map that was provided by Park Hill Smith and Cooper. We, in conversation over that annexation, pulled the actual annexation that was approved by city council. And kind of had some further confusion as to what actually was annexed. Why wasn't a small sliver provided, or labeled or indicated? Was it a larger section that was annexed? A little bit of confusion there. So I have actually already reached out to Rio Grande Council of Governments to utilize their GIS software. I've provided them a copy of what was actually annexed to outline kind of like, if you look at the annexation of anything we do, it says like tract 1, block 6, and they can pinpoint it more to see what was actually annexed. Is it a larger section? Is it just that sliver of North Highway 90? So we're working on that. We did note that the annexation paperwork does not directly really apply to any ward. So ideally, no one is registered in any of the wards. Geo further reached out to the election administrator with some additional addresses so that they could start going through the addresses to see who's registered. Is there a pattern? Is there consistency? Are they all in one ward? Are they all in another ward? The feedback from her was several of them are in Ward 3, only one was listed in Ward 2. And then in addition, there's a handful of addresses that are actually annexed within the city limits that doesn't have any ward designation. So they haven't been voting in a ward. This is a much larger concern that we want to address correctly. So that we make sure moving forward, one, not only that we've done all our verification, we can't find any formal paperwork that says who should be registered where. So we want to make sure we do it correctly. There are a few thought processes in place. But really fully understanding the first step would be what was actually annexed. Based off of, like I said, the annexation map provided by Park Hill Smith and Cooper, our ward map that obviously is missing one little sliver, and then actually taking and looking at the full-blown GIS of what was done. So she's helping create that. But some of the things that we still kind of need to address, of course, is one, making sure we verify the annexation. 2, working back with the residents who are currently registered and not registered. If we memorialize the annexation for all one ward, you would be pulling voters from Ward 3 into Ward 2 or vice versa, however we want to look at that. I know Geo has been working with the election administrator. I haven't received any email from the last one we got last week. Have you? So right after the packet was kind of put together, she'd come back with, these are ones in Ward 3, this one's in Ward 2, these aren't in any ward but are in the city limits. And so there's still some more research that needs to be done to really determine who kind of belongs where, and then the next step council wants to take. I wanted to make that known because you do have an interested party, but they are registered in Ward 3.
So these people that aren't registered anywhere, did they go in to vote?
They wouldn't be able to vote in city elections. They would be voting in county.
So what
Do we-
makes us think,
Go ahead, no, go ahead.
what makes us think that he's on the wrong one?
So basically, the ward map hasn't been updated to include the annexed properties. So they shouldn't have put him or any of the other properties that was annexed in any ward, because we haven't been able to find definitively anything saying they should be in one or the other. It should, none of them should be registered. But Laura did confirm that a previous election administrator did include some of those properties in Ward 3. Again, it's problematic just because we haven't been able to find any formal documentation of them being in any city ward officially, right?
So we annex, who decides what ward they're in?
We're supposed to. The city of Alpine is, but this was done and there was no. And this isn't just the only one we're gonna have to clean up as well. This is the one that's been brought to our attention. But in doing so, Gio and I both agree with, well, we didn't think about it for the Dollar General. Ideally, even though it's a commercial, we still need to put it in a ward. And the same with the
Skyway.
Skyway Gardens. Cause that would ideally be considered possibly Ward 4. And that's, will be 2 large sections of voters being added, or larger than, you know, we don't have huge growth, but we have some. So, and then Geo is, you know, there is no formal documentation, but there is a discrepancy. And for me, I'd like to know what their outlines are of the annexation. And if a sliver was missed, or was the whole thing picked and choose on how they annex? Because when you look at the annexation map, it's color coded, which does make it a little bit more helpful. But there's a section that doesn't include basically the Hampton up, that little area, in the ward map, but it's included in the annexation, but it's not a separate annexation than the rest of that big annexation from 2010. So working with the COG and pinpointing what exactly was annexed would give us kind of a good understanding of, was it just the sliver? Was it the whole thing? Was it different parcels? And you're right, I mean, the city should have made a decision and they didn't. And so we want to clean it up. I don't want to go one way or the other without knowing what fully was annexed and then understanding who all does it of that.
In deciding who goes in what ward, do we take account the population in those wards?
So ideally you can, yes. And I haven't fully dove into what would be considered like districting, redistricting. That is something to have as part of conversations. Ideally, cities redistrict after census, because you get a better idea of your population. We haven't had significant growth to really be overly concerned about it, but I do think it needs to be part of the conversation, because we have more than just this area that will need to be cleaned up. So for me right now, it's really knowing what was fully annexed.
Councilmember Stevens?
So my sense is, and I get the people want to make sure they're in the right order, whatever. But the facts are, we have a ward now. And if people are in the ward that's indicated on the ward map, that's their legal right to go vote.
So,
Correct?
yes, and that section is not included on the word map.
Okay, so I said, I'm just trying to put it in
I know.
perspective. Big picture, we have a ward map. People are appropriately allocated in terms of where they are in the wards. We have cases where annexations have occurred and they've not been incorporated into a ward. We need to clarify that and go work it. Okay, so this is not a big issue. It's a individual issue to go work, and now you're working the details associated with that.
Correct.
In addition, the second thing, at some point it makes sense to look at are the wards balanced relative to population? And to me, that's a secondary activity to look and say, okay, do we have a fair number of people in each of the 5 wards from a voting standpoint? But that would be a second step beyond.
Correct.
So you're trying to work, and I get, someone thinks they're in whatever Ward 2 and they should be in Ward 3 or vice versa. I get that, and work in the annexes. Do you have a sense about how long it's going to take to get us to the point where the individual issues are worked?
So right now, I'm working with the COG and I don't have, so I've emailed her and I haven't gotten a response.
Okay.
She's been working on tons of different things for the whole region.
Yeah.
So really, we're dependent on her schedule.
Okay.
Because we need to know what was annexed.
Yeah.
So she'd be able to tell us the property lines because she can take the CAD map and overlay it. So we know exactly what properties are in question.
I can tell you she won't be available for the next 3 weeks because I just scheduled an appointment with her today for Skyway. She'll be in Austin and she said that she wouldn't be able to meet with me till probably the 1st of February because she says that Skyway, just like you said, has never been entered into the 911 system. So, but she said all that was important. She says I won't be able to do it for a couple of weeks.
To compound the issue, the election administrator said if we don't get her an updated map in January, it's not happening. So regardless, if there are changes, they're not gonna be made unless we get her a map in January.
What about the people who are living in an area that's been annexed and yet they haven't been assigned a ward? Does that mean they're not gonna be able to vote?
Yes, it's contingent on us updating the.
Which they probably haven't voted or this would have been found out.
Right, I don't
Possibly.
think y'all are, I don't think any of us can change any of this. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
None of us had anything to do with it, so it's just something that's gonna have to play out. And it may not be fair to everybody, and somebody may want to run, somebody may want to come vote, and if they can't right now, they just can't. I mean, you can't.
But we also know that we can start cleaning it up, working through it and addressing the other. properties as
Absolutely.
well.
Oh, yeah.
The good news is GIS opens up so many things to work much more easily.
And that's where Casey has been really a godsend
I
on
know.
some of our
She's good.
projects. Because like I said, she's doing the zoning map, she's looking at annexation, she's looking at the flood. She's pulling in the pieces we've been missing with the data we've given her. And so this was just one more, and she doesn't currently have a digital ward map.
Okay.
So she doesn't have something right now in place that kind of says, 1101 West Murphy is in Ward 3. She doesn't have that kind of breakdown. We just have really the PDF version that shows you the rough boundaries.
Well, y'all are doing what you can do, and I'm sure that there's a whole lot else that can be done. I mean, it's unfortunate, but Laura's not gonna bend the rules. That's what everybody's waiting to happen. Laura Nussbaum is not bending any rule because it's not legal, and Laura's not gonna do it if it's not legal. So,
Are we talking 25 people, 50 people, 100 people? Certainly not 500 people.
Well, I think we don't know until we know what was annexed.
I understand, but just, do we have any sense, any judgment?
It could be anywhere from 5 to 10 people to a whole section.
It wasn't very many addresses.
Okay.
We looked at the address points that we do have from the latest 911 map. Yeah, maybe 12 tops addresses.
Okay, well, that at least ballparks it and puts it in perspective, because we have roughly 2,500 properties in Alpine. Ballpark. Yeah, I just think about water meters and things like that. Yeah.
Okay, so 2,800.
Yeah, okay. Okay, that helps.
thank you.
Ask 2 quick questions. You said the latest 911 map. Does that mean everything after the 911 map is basically no data in there?
Well, we need to get an updated map. The last one I have is from 2018. So there's a possibility. I mean, an example is Tara Vaughn's property. She just applied for the special use permit. I realized there wasn't a 911 address. She got it. That's not on there. I'm sure that's happened quite a few times.
That's the most recent 911 map in 2018.
Yes, around that.
So Casey has the most up-to-date 911 map because it also ties into our PSAP, which is our police department. So it's really important. That's how they do all of the 911 calls. But she doesn't just manage the city of Alpine. It's Brewster County, it's Presidio County, it's, I believe, Culberson. It's pretty much the whole El Paso area region. So we're dependent on self-reporting, us calling it out with, hey, do you have this information? Like you, Skyway, no one thought to, hey, each one of
Well,
these.
she says they only have the 1104, so they don't have apartment
Apartment.
1101 or whatever. She says if you have it put in right, she says the police department is able to say it's the second building to your rights, give them a little bit more instead of just it's 1104 and then you get there and there's 49 residents.
And with hers is she has the ability to do all the layering. So she basically has the CAD and then she can layer over the 911, she can layer over a floodplain, she can layer over our, hopefully eventually our ward map or district, however we want to go with that direction, our zones. So she's been really helpful with doing the zones and making sure all the information that Matt Walter, which I think is left, put together and updating all that.
And I'm sure we can get them updated.
So Bill, if y'all get a call out to Skyway, how do you know where to go?
Freaking customers.
What do you say?
Frequent customers.
Oh.
No,
Or you call me?
so, just like everything on the, we do have the capabilities of taking up further calls.
Okay.
Just the other day, we had someone down Pine Manor that had fallen, and she was, just pressing out on one repeatedly. And, she couldn't say anything, and we had to find her.
Last question I was gonna ask on that, do we need to codify anything in chapter 9 of annexations in code of ordinances? Basically saying when we annex that we give it a word.
Yes, so Gio and I both agreed that that would be one we want to update in the ordinance. That kind of adds to our checklist with, you know, as part of your annexation paperwork, it will specifically say what ward that property is going into.
That list just keep getting longer and longer.
Because it would have been, amazing situation if I pulled the ordinance and it would have said, but there was no indication, not in the minutes, not in anything I could find.
And the same thing with our recent Skyway 2 annexation.
So
We didn't put that in there.
But
It's not
either
in our
was-
minutes.
Either was Skyway the first one.
Okay,
And so,
The last two were kind of obvious where they'd be.
yeah.
Being that Ward 4 was the only option for Skyway, and then for the Dollar General, Ward 1 would have been the only option.
and it also helps create that checklist.
Mhm. Councilmember Sandate? Okay. Any others? Councilmember Rodriguez?
I guess what we're saying is that it might not be taken care of to be able to do before election time.
Or with Casey gone, then
But we do urge you to stay involved. Don't give up on us. These are things that come up.
On our Parks Board. You put him on our
Yes,
Parks
he's on
Board.
our parks board. It is unfortunate and something, it's just, like we said, our list keeps getting bigger and bigger of things that come up, and we don't know until something like this comes up and brings it to our attention.
All right, any other? Ready to move on? Okay, so moving on to action or discussion item number 7, city manager.
Pick 5, and that's all you get.
So I know that we've had several
make it-
conversations over priorities and deadlines and what do we want to do? What do we don't want to do? I just want you to know that this is what I kind of came up with. Rick Stevens had brought up a couple of points as well. This doesn't even include the finance side that I manage as well. So when we have, so let's go to, XYZ. So 26, when we have conversations about priorities and things we want to accomplish, I want everyone in this room and the public that's listening to understand, we want to accomplish it all.
Today.
And yes, and we truly do want to make improvements. We want to move forward. We want to get things on track. We want to change things, add things, delete things. This is just kind of over the past 6 months, thoughts and ideas on top of the 2 big priorities from the strategic plan. So I want you to understand the process for me. Is we're doing the strategic plan, we come up with 2 priorities, and then the next month you put 2 more. And the next month you put 2 more. And then the next month you put 2 more. That is great, except for my priority kind of get out of wonk because I want to make sure we address them all. So currently, based on the conversations, and some of these are reoccurring, we don't have a choice, we have to keep up with them. Looking at the TDS contract, STRs, of course, the wastewater treatment plant, the streets, the water system, grant priorities, budget, employees, employee position, city attorney, City council agenda updates with chapter 23, the city charter revision, our ongoing, working with the golf course. Ordinance review. Now remember, when we say ordinance review, we have multiple ordinances, annexation map, the zoning map, annual policies and resolutions, the ward map, things that have just been added. Economic development is becoming a strong thing, with strong towns. We've talked about the traffic in Alpine. We just got that TA grant to look at doing a study on bicycling and pedestrian and connecting the different parts of the city. Our city system upgrades, potential for quiet zone, board and commission priorities, any of our zoning updates. This was just a brief list to put together. So I really wanted to sit down with council and kind of go over, I want to accomplish all of this. But I also want council to understand budget is a huge impact on the city. We've increased the number of workshops we have. And it's a lot of detailed information because every year we change the budget up a little bit to be more transparent, put more information in, get the departments more involved, get the community more involved, look at it, address our projects. And there's also the requirements of what we have to have in the budget from the state perspective. So that takes up a little bit of time.
Just a tiny bit.
The ordinances do take time. One, we want to research what are other people doing, get ideas. Do we want our boards and commissions to look at them? Are they ones that don't go to the boards and commissions? We want time for council to review it. We want the city attorney to have time to review it. And then you have to go through a first reading and a second reading. We have a lot of reoccurring things. You have your annual resolutions for your utility fees. You have your policies that are currently in place that handle finance. You also have your investments. You have the country club one. We have some big contracts coming up as far as renewing BBT, looking at the new software, the smart meters for the gas. All of these things are also coming into play. Employees. Looking at all of that, bringing in that third-party vendor. I finally narrowed down to an RFP that I can utilize that will benefit the city. Looking at other cities and getting that information out. Working with all of the boards and commissions, getting them the information they need. Geo does a wonderful job, but I also like to be part of that process. So I just really wanted to make it very open to the community that this is the tip of the iceberg. And the city really is working on a lot of different projects. I would just like to come before council and get a better understanding. Like you said, only get 5.
Okay, so I wanted to say that we had all those strategic planning workshops. We did all that, and then we came together after we had that. We looked at the data. We had more workshops, town halls, and the such. So in my opinion, the residents have told us, number 1, wastewater treatment plant. So it should be number 1. They told us number 2, employees. So that should be second on our list. Number 3, the residents told us that they wanted streets. So those are the things that I think we did all that work. We got all their input, that we would be doing our residents a disservice if we didn't listen to what they wanted us to do. Another thing to consider, we've had a lot of workshops, and I hate to, I hope I don't get tarred and feathered here, but I think we should start them at 4 o'clock so that we can accomplish more during the workshops instead of having this 45-minute time frame to do them.
I'd
So
also
those are my
like council
thoughts.
to think of not having workshops solely on days we have council meetings.
Right.
But have it designated on a different day, even if it's a Saturday and you do it for 4 hours. So you don't have 5 workshops an hour before every council meeting, but maybe you have 1 workshop and try to address everything.
Yes, and we've discussed that as a council because some residents can't come on Tuesdays, but they can come on a Saturday. And we have done that when we got in the bus that Judy got us from AISD. We drove
It was
around
fun.
town. It was fun. We made a list of what roads needed repaired, which ones should be prioritized. Y'all remember that day, right? And some of our residents joined us. We had a great time. Yeah.
But
And
then
we
what
went,
happened? Did we fix the streets that we looked at?
it was Country Club Estate was number 1 on our list.
Are they
Yeah.
fixed? It's not doing us any good if we have these things and we go do it and then nothing happens.
So council
there's
also,
still-
sorry,
That's okay.
council also had to make a budgetary decision in regards to the funding for roads. And so we didn't isolate money specifically for outside or outsourcing paving. We're solely leaving it to the seal coating, which happens more in the spring, not the fall.
I know, and we have put money toward wastewater treatment. That's
We
what
had the
we're fixing to
workshop
do.
today.
We gave everybody some raises.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're looking at that.
Uh-huh.
So we're on track. I just feel like we just nearly get through with something and then nothing happens. That's how I feel.
Okay, Councilmember Stevens?
I gave you permission.
One, this is a great list. Okay, it's all the things that are in work. Number two, when I sit down and look at this list, I put C and M and made two columns. And I said, C are some of the things we as council own to give guidance to Megan. And I then took those and grouped them into three categories, A, B's, and C's. There's A's that we gotta say we wanna go work on, like the discussion we just had about SDRs earlier. I made that an A, okay? There are some things like B, city council agenda. I made that a B. We'd like to go work it, but frankly, it's not, we're doing
doesn't.
fine run of the business.
Right.
Okay, and then I put C, potential quiet zone. Okay, we don't like to have a quiet zone, but frankly, that doesn't make our list right now.
No.
Okay? So I made, out of the 26 items on here, I made 15 of them. I put them in A, B's, and C's. And then I had another column, M, called Megan.
Megan.
And I put dots on those for Megan to give us an update on what's going on. For example, wastewater treatment plant. We set a plan. She's off working the plan. My view is
We just had our update today.
she can give an update, and like once she could say, I would almost take this list of Megan's and say, wastewater treatment plant, red, yellow, green. It's on track or it's not. If it's not on track, yellow or red, we won't ask. If it's on green, we leave her alone and let her go do it, and we know what the next milestone is. So my sense is, part of this is taking the burden off of all of us wanting to ask Megan what the hell's going on, and let her just, here's my plan, here's what's going on, yeah, we're percolating along, and then for us to go do our list. And my suggestion is we ought to each do that, come back to the next meeting or send it to Megan, here's our thoughts, let her integrate it, and then we can bicker over whether we have a part in the wrong spot, but we're really relying on Megan to manage this place. We're trying to work policies. To your point about workshops, yeah, if we can do some Saturday ones, I'm not wildly excited about that, but I did put my tar and feathers away that you consider it, because we have some work to do.
Yeah,
And
I don't
that's
know
part of
about
our
4
responsibility.
hours though. That's. a
4 hours,
little-
maybe a little long.
Yeah, that's a
but
little
couple
long.
hours, you
Yes.
know, what we ought to go do. Yeah, those are my thoughts. I don't know if that helps or makes your job worse, but I'm trying to help you do your work and we need to do our work. And I think the last thing I'd say is this list, we need to have in front of us and say, is it on the list or not? If it's on the list, that's where we prioritize. If it's not on the list, we have to decide what's gonna fall below the line and what's gonna be above the line, no different than we have on budget. We have more wants, needs, desires. It ought to be prioritized. And if it fits, great. If not, wait till next time. Anyway, because we got lots to work and more we got time for.
Well, it
Absolutely.
also helps with the direction for departments as well, because there's some departments that it would be easier to say, look, these are some of the big priorities, let's get them done and not worry about some of the smaller projects. I mean, we all talk about paving, let's focus on that. Or you look at building services. If we're gonna be constantly changing all of the ordinances, they really need to kind of understand what's our end game or which ones are we changing when we're changing, because they have to enforce them. Same with Daryl. The police department, as we're changing things, has to enforce them. So for me to be able to come back and say, these are the ordinances we're solely focused on, and this is what we're moving forward with this year, that would also be easier. And there's some that obviously will always stay on the plate. I don't want economic development to ever fall off because the city's never fully addressed it. And I think that it is the future of our city. And then there's always gonna be a shifting priority when, and I'm gonna get killed when I get home, we have a major water leak and the team is out all night. And it, you know, messes with the system. Do we have the supply? So there's things that will change. I just really wanted council and the public to understand that we do listen to everything that you guys ask of us. We take everyone into account, and this is the tip of the iceberg. This doesn't list all the little projects that we're still working on, the changes we're making internally, the new civic clerk software that we're trying to get implemented. There's a lot. And so we just really wanted to have kind of an eye opener right now to say, guys, we're listening to the public. We really want to get everything done. We want to listen to the council, get everything done. But you really need to know what all you're working on. This is
And like the mayor said, you know, we are listening to what they say as far as all those workshops,
Uh-huh.
but a lot of this stuff is day-to-day stuff that comes up. So we can't push it aside, you know, it doesn't mean that we've lost track of where we need to be or where we want to be. But some of those things just come up and they have to be dealt with. And sometimes you don't see that things are going. I know we were getting a lot of complaints with the park. Well, we were tied up with permits and all this stuff. It wasn't that, hey, saw on Facebook, you know, we're giving all this money. Now, where's that money? Because nothing's being done. Well, we were waiting for permits. The city also has to wait on permits and equipment and everything to come in. So that park is, I was told today that there is work being done now. Their forms are being laid. And so, you know, sometimes even though you don't see it, things are happening.
Government provides red tape for government.
Uh-huh.
So we
It's
have to
just
be
choice.
TLR inspected as well.
Mhm.
We have to be handicap compliance.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for that park, we have no one local who could do it. So we had to hire someone out of another city to come in. And they have to review the plans and make suggestions. So
Councilmember Sandate?
Well, this was, I went through, water plant number 1,
Mhm.
employees number 2, water waste treatment number 3, streets number 4, budget number 5, and grant priorities number 6.
And that's something we need to keep in mind, that budget is fixing to start again. I mean, we just finished, but we're fixing to start.
for those of you know, it's already started.
You know, but our involvement is going, you know, it's gonna just about to get worse.
Uh-huh. Councilmember Nance?
And the budget should basically prioritize what we think or pay for what we prioritize.
Yep.
So that's you know, ancillary thing that I was gonna say with the wastewater treatment plant, I think it's behooves us often to pay extra money and have experts come in on these large projects and just like the HR planning. Like none of us understand compression outside of maybe Stevens because he worked in HR and everything else. But when people talk to me about HR compression, my eyes glaze over. It's not, you know, what I'm particularly for. So I, as a council person, think it's not a bad idea for us to spend money just to get a properly implemented plan because we haven't sent anyone to TML much. We're not in the loop as far as the most advanced things of what may have been brought up in streets, most advanced other things that are out there. So I think the people that are out there, if your job is to build wastewater treatment plants, I guarantee you know everything about wastewater treatment plants. So I think we shouldn't be afraid to pay for planning and then the city, you know, coming back retroactively and make it happen. I think that's our job with Megan.
Councilmember Rodriguez? Okay, Councilmember Stokes?
I'm good.
All right, everybody good?
I would like to just kind of, because it's part of my city managers, I will speak very fast. The TDES contract is just an ongoing discussion. Eventually, we probably will sit down and have a full-blown conversation, get some clarifications and possible changes. We went over the STRs. Enforcement is key priority, some updating. You were provided an update on the wastewater treatment plant itself, but we still have issues, or not issues, but concerns with the lift station at the Holiday Inn. We do manage that. They did pay for it to be installed. We do have funds to change how that is designed. So that's a future discussion. The streets, I was finally provided a quote on the hot box. We are looking at 90,000 for brand new equipment. I'm just waiting for the buy board contract to verify compliance and procurement protocols. They did give me their seal coat list as far as quantity, so we will get that RFP out. The water plan, we did briefly discuss it at the last meeting. We do have a continuation of that discussion with utility rates in that study at the next meeting. The grant priorities is part of the budget process. The city will prioritize what grants we want to look at. In the past, we've gone after any and every grant. I don't think we fully understood the implications of having to manage all of them. It is a lot of time, it is a lot of documentation, and it is a lot of room for error. We are now venturing off into a lot of federal funding. They don't play nice when you make a little mistake. They ask for repayment, they slap you on the hand, and it becomes a bigger deal. So we will prioritize instead of going after any and all grants. I've had the conversation with multiple departments. I've sat down with everyone and said, we will follow our policies and procedures. Because I don't have time to manage them full blown and basically cover everything. The budget process has already started. The design of the budget will be completely different this year. I am making significant changes. One, to be more transparent. Two, to outline more where the money's going. We say streets, but we're going to start outlining what blocks. We're going to put more detailed information in it. The employees, I do want the council to know that surprisingly, we only have 5.5 open positions for the whole entire city.
Good. And they are?
So
Just in
we
case anybody
have,
listening wants to apply. It's a job.
so we do
Yeah.
have new hiring processes that are online. It is a step-by-step application process. We only accept applications online. We only have 1 in streets. We have 2 in the utilities, the water department, 1 in gas, part-time recycle clerk, and then the director of utilities and finance. But that's another discussion later on to explain the difference in that numbers. So we really are excited that, you know, for some reason, I thought we were a lot worse off than we were. But when you have a little free time on the weekend, you can kind of figure all that out. The key positions we will talk about. The city attorney does have an action list for every second meeting of the month. You're working on chapter 23. The charter revision is set for the November election upon further discussion as far as priorities are concerned. We're working with the golf course and moving forward with that. You've given an idea of all the ordinances we want to do. Annexation map has been handed over. The zoning map has been handed over to the COG for assistance. We do have an internal list that we're updating for annual policies and resolutions that we are required. This covers the airport, this covers utilities, this covers any contracts that we have currently pending. The board map we just brought up, economic development. This is something that's fairly new on the list, but we really need to take a long look at that. I will have some additional information on traffic concerns, city system upgrades. I have been working with several companies trying to understand an ERP. This isn't a normal RFP process, which is the request for a proposal. This is a full-blown system that we have to make sure we outline exactly what we want. Otherwise we get charged for every extra piece we add. The quiet zone is mentioned. It's out. Okay. It's out there. I know it's been brought up. Several
Quiet
people have heard
zone.
about
You're
it.
working on the.
I'm working on that, you know, when it's ready on my phone.
Good deal.
The board and commission priorities. I know Darren's been working his, Rick has thought about his. I asked that others think about their, we overtasked. We tasked them hard the first year.
Yeah.
And kind of thought, well, if we don't have a quorum, it pushes everything back. Or if something is more complicated than we anticipated, and we don't have someone to do that research, it pushes it back. And then of course, the zoning updates. This one is a big one because as we talk about affordable housing, as we talk about the different zones and what's allowed and isn't allowed, and we start opening them up or we narrow them down, we really need to consider what we're allowing within our zones, including our build specs. Right now, the city can regulate lot size. We can regulate what gets put in there. So if we want to make recommendations, you know, specifically regarding the lot size, if it's, you know, instead of 10,000, it goes to 5,000, it's a smaller footprint, you know, the houses are a little bit smaller, but allows for possible development that other people may never have wanted to do because they can't meet those specifications.
Right.
We talk about affordable housing and we look at these large residential properties that maybe ideally could have 4 or 5 mobile homes on them, but we can't because it doesn't fall within that zone. Or maybe they're just zoned completely incorrectly. I mean, Frontier Village. It is considered a mobile home park, but it's not zoned that way. There are several residents who ideally may be like, I would love to make a little extra cash. I have an acre. I could comfortably put several mobile homes, but I can't because I don't meet the zoning requirements. So these are all conversations that need to be had. Of course, it would go back to planning and zoning to get their recommendations. But council is on the path to make changes. And you talk about affordable housing, you talk about economic development, you talk about doing better for the community. Well, changing our initial footprint could ideally help with that. And you have residents who truly are interested. I mean, I know all of us have had people reach out, opening up beauty salons with, in residential. I'm not saying let's go all hog wild and you can do, anything you want Wild West here. But I think we do need to consider that long term.
Right, like we have somebody who's interested, has a large piece of property, putting tiny homes in that area.
So, and I think that.
And he can't do that at this point because of the way it's
Correct.
regulated.
So these are all things that working back with building services, working back with, the planning and our zoning commission, we can start to develop the community to allow for the growth that we've been preventing, because we've regulated ourselves. And it will be hard because you will have people who I want an acre and I don't want anything to happen to it. And you have people who I have my acre and I want to start my own little development. I'm just throwing an acre out there.
Right.
I'd love to own an acre. I got my lot. I got my lot, with no parking. But I think everyone wants to make improvements and I think we can address that. This is the tip of the iceberg.
Okay, great. Any
So
other
that was my
comments?
city manager.
Great list.
Are we ready to move on?
Please.
Okay, all right, let's move on to action items. Action item number 1 belongs to city manager. Please read that for us.
Accept the resignation of council member Ward 1 Judy Stokes effective upon the appointment of a successor to the Ward 1 city council position.
Okay, I need a motion.
So I'd like to make a motion.
I need a second.
No, hold on, I did not read the motion. yet.
Okay.
Please allow me to read the motion because it's very important, the wording in the motion.
Okay, go ahead,
Okay.
council.
I would like to move that we accept the resignation of council member Ward 1 Judy Stokes effective immediately and appoint her to the Ward 1 city council position until a successor is named.
Okay, I need a second for that amendment.
Second.
Okay, any discussion to accept the resignation of Councilmember Ward 1 Judy Stokes? The amendment is immediately to the Ward 1 and to appoint a successor to the Ward 1 council position.
Yeah, and the reason behind the wording is very specific. So our charter requires that when someone steps down, it's council's responsibility to appoint the
Yes.
replacement. Okay?
Yes.
Judy identified her intent to resign in the May timeframe or prior to that. But accepting her resignation at this point allows council appropriate deliberation about who should replace her. But we can't do that until she is resigned, thus the resignation. And in the interim, while council has its deliberations, Judy still sits on the bench and she
Yes.
participates as a full-time city council member. And so that's the rationale behind the thought process.
Yes, because the Secretary of State said when an officer vacates an office, they still have the legal authority to continue exercising the duties of the office until the vacancy is filled.
So what
That's
is the
the
difference
wording.
between that and other times that there has been vacancies and they haven't been filled?
Sorry, discussing it without a second,
Oh,
No, since I
Send out the-
seconded.
oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Don't
so
confuse me.
the difference is accepting a resignation now and we appoint her gives us the flexibility. We have two people come in and say they'd like the job.
Uh-huh.
We have some work to go do. My view is, in the future, at a future meeting, we probably ought to propose a resolution to go do a special election to allow people to go compete for that job for the year remaining term to go do that. Because Judy's gonna get to me and say, I'm out of here, bub. So, I think that gives everyone the opportunity. I'm a personal believer that Ward 1 members ought to be the ones who make the recommendation to council. Far be it from us to make that choice. And so if we do a special election, we are now informed to go work that. It allows the electorate to make the recommendation and allows us to follow the charter.
And I will
And
say, I did think about that when I said
That's what I
May.
figured.
I knew y'all were already having an election.
And I want to point out too, that the Secretary of State said that we do need to call a special election.
But my view,
So
that
that
would be a
there's no
future
questions
action for
about that.
I think that was already in the process, wasn't it? y'all?
So-
Yes, because it can be in May, the
So we
special
would
election.
consider having an order for a special election at the next meeting for council consideration. And it would be held at the same time as the regular election, but it would be called separately and applications would be managed separately.
Yes, and it would be called a special election per the Secretary of State.
I'm not trying to get personal, Judy, but you did mention health. Will you staying on be detrimental to your health? I mean,
No.
okay, so there would be
I'm
no
good till
issues.
May, or I wouldn't have put till May. That's why I would stay till May to not put everybody in a big bind.
Well, I mean, yeah, I
If
appreciate
I thought
that. I just
if I
wanted,
thought I was ill, I'd just go home. I wouldn't need her right now.
Councilmember Sandate? Councilmember Nance?
So if the election's at the same time as the general election, there's not a large cost increase. Would be-
I think this really depends who files. For example, we might be able to cancel if the mayor race is unopposed. So at that point, we would only need the specific races, but if the mayor race is opposed, it's gonna be extended period, because we'd have to order for every ward and every race would have to be on the ballot regardless if it's unopposed or not.
They're probably not gonna be unopposed. We already have 2 candidates. Well, that
Well,
would be
yes.
special.
So the mayor's
that would
only
be
one
the
will be
special.
citywide,
Yeah.
otherwise it would be determined by the board.
And then if we open a special election up just for the people that are interested in that, at the next meeting, what are the time periods of, when do we start accepting applications?
February 7th.
And that would be open till,
As soon as the order is approved at February 6th meeting, the next day we can accept applications until March 4th at 5 p.m.
March 4th, 5 p.m.
And the Secretary of State did outline that there are specific requirements and deadlines that have to be met for this.
And I also want to point out that the Secretary of State said, in your situation, I would interpret that provision to mean that the city council must appoint someone to fill the vacancy until the May 2024 general election for your city. And at the May 2024 election, the office would go back on the ballot for the remaining year of the unexpired term, and that would be called a special election.
So the person gets elected, runs for this election, and then they would have to run again if they wanted to continue.
In May.
Yeah. So it would revert back to our normal. election.
What day is the election?
May 4th, Saturday.
Gotcha.
Neither can be with you.
Perfect.
So if council appoints somebody, they would be here basically March, April for
Full
2
year.
months. Then they have to run for election.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
what the Secretary of State's saying.
But
in
this,
May, they
this
would run.
motion just made says Judy's in the job.
Yeah, so you guys have appointed Judy,
Yes.
and then in the election, whoever gets elected would serve the remaining year, and then
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah, that's why I was very specific about the wording, except resignation.
And appoint. Councilmember Rodriguez?
if she's willing and able to do it, that would be the easiest thing to do. Like Rick says, let the people make the decision on who they want to have there. I'm just a little concerned. Is she gonna get her big paycheck? She might
I
not
might
be,
have to deduct.
she might not be able to live without big paycheck.
Yeah. Will you
So I
survive
bet
without that
Brett,
$100?
It's 90, you know, I take
$90.
tax. I do. Don't I?
Okay. Okay, so is council ready to vote in discussion? All right, so all in favor of accepting the resignation of Councilmember Ward 1 Judy Stokes effective immediately and appointing her as the successor to the Ward 1 council member position, please raise your right hand
Until a successor is named.
until the successor is named.
That's the motion.
Should I abstain?
No, you abstain. Okay, so all in favor, please raise your right hand. Okay, City Secretary, all council members approved that motion except for Councilmember Judy Stokes, who abstained. Good deal. All right, so that's taken care of. All right. Action item number 2. This belongs to the City Secretary.
Action item number 2 is approve order 2024-01-01 in order of general election for May 4th, 2024. For the purpose of electing 1 Ward 2 council member, 1 Ward 4 council member, and mayor for 2-year terms with early voting from April 22nd, 2024 to April 30th, 2024.
I need a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the election order as presented.
I need a second.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilmember Stokes, Councilmember Rodriguez, Councilmember Nance, Member Sedante, Councilmember Stevens. Okay, all in favor to approve the order as written, please raise your right hand. Okay, City Secretary, it is unanimous. We approved order 2024-01-01. Okay, moving on to action item number 3. This belongs to the city manager.
Approve a 12-month lease with CAPS van and truck rental for 2 vehicles utilized by officers participating in the high-intensity drug trafficking program for fiscal year 23-24.
I need a motion.
Make the motion to approve the 12-month lease for CAPS, the van and truck rental, 2 vehicles used by officers participating in the high-intensity drug trafficking program for fiscal year 23-24.
Excellent. I need a second.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion. Councilmember Stevens.
Why would this be part of the normal lease that we have? It's just another.
Question. So there has been a lovely debate for 6 months over this. Okay, background. The city worked with outside agencies as part of this initiative to do the CAPS agreement. So it's always been kind of managed by others. Long term, it should have never gone that way. But in order to get reimbursed, we have to have a formal contract. No one can find a contract, not even the initial one. When I reached out to Enterprise,
2009.
Oh,
Wow.
I have emails that go back to 2009 when I was at the county. This is not new. When I reached out to Enterprise, because we have a normal process already, what they came back with wasn't gonna work for now. So after further discussion, we're gonna go with CAPS for the year so that we can start getting our reimbursements through this grant, and then switch them over to the Enterprise for fiscal year 24-25. There was just a lot of unopened
I got it.
questions, and so we were trying to.
okay. Discussion. Councilmember Sedate,
No question.
Nance, Rodriguez, Stokes. Let's vote. All in favor to approve the 12-month lease with CAPS, please raise your right hand. City Secretary, all council members voted in favor of approving the 12-month lease. Excellent. That brings us to city council member comments. Councilmember Stokes.
I'd like to thank Jennifer and Reagan for stepping up and taking an interest in this spot. I'd like to thank Catherine. That was a lovely speech you gave. It really was very nice. And thanks for the sandwiches.
You're welcome.
I'd like to thank Stephen for his presentation. I'd like to thank Megan and Gio and everybody on council for bearing with all that of trying to figure out, could I stay? Would I stay? Was I gonna stay? Could y'all have an election? Could you not have an election? Because it wasn't just an easy thing. They do a couple of other things, as we saw, you know. Megan put that so we know she was doing something.
Job security.
That's all I have to say.
Councilmember Rodriguez. Councilmember Nance, Councilmember Sedate, Councilmember Stevens.
All the announcement I'd like to make is, there's a Ward 5 community gathering this Saturday from 2:30 to 4 at the Holiday Inn Express.
Awesome. Okay, so I hope everybody attends that. And it doesn't just have to be Ward 5 members, correct?
No, it's whoever wants to show
Whoever
up.
wants to go.
If, however, more than 3 of us show up, then I do need to make sure we get that posted.
Right.
Okay.
So, all right, and for my comments, I want to thank Councilmember Stokes for agreeing to be appointed So we just appointed her until May when we have the special election. And I do want to thank Reagan and Jennifer. I live in Ward 1 and I think either of them would be absolutely phenomenal. And I would be honored to be represented by you or by Jennifer. And thank you, council. My speech was heartfelt. I appreciate everything you've done. I think we're working very well together. And I like that we don't always agree. And I like that we don't always vote the same way as somebody else. I think it's wonderful. It's going to move Alpine ahead dramatically. All right. So with that, okay, so this brings us to item number 11, executive session. Pursuant to chapter 551 of the Texas Government Code, the city council reserves the right to convene into executive session from time to time as deemed necessary during this meeting for any posted agenda item or to receive advice from the attorney as permitted by law. Tonight, the city council will recess into executive session pursuant to section 551.071 and 551.074 to discuss city attorney update and personnel matters. May I get a motion to recess into executive session?
I'll make the motion to move into executive session.
Okay, can I have a second? Okay, so I have a motion and a second to recess into executive session. Do I have any discussion? All right, seeing none, we'll proceed to a vote. If you'd like to vote in favor of the motion, please raise your right hand. Okay, City Secretary, all council members voted in favor. The motion to recess into executive session passed unanimously. We are recessing into executive session at 7:57 p.m. Okay, so may I please have a motion to reconvene into open session? Okay, I need a second. Okay, so I have a motion by Counselor Stevens and a second by Counselor Stokes to reconvene into open session. Any discussion? Seeing none, we're going to proceed to a vote. If you would like to move in favor of the motion to reconvene into open session, please raise your right hand. City Secretary, all council members are in favor of reconvening into open session, and we are reconvening at 8:57 PM. This brings us to item number 12, action after executive session. May I please get a motion?
Mayor, I propose that the city council direct the city manager to request a summary billing for work as law firm for the periods of August 2023 to December of 2023.
Okay, may I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, so all in favor to direct the city manager to request summary billing so that we can pay the attorney Juarez Law Firm outstanding money from August to December of 2023, please raise your right hands. Okay, City Secretary, all members are in favor of requesting the summary billing so that we can pay the Juarez Law Firm outstanding money from August through December of 2023. Okay, may I have a motion in regards to the personnel matters?
Mayor,
Counselor,
I propose that the city take no action relative to personnel matters.
may I have a second? Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of no action on the personnel matters, please raise your right hand. Okay, City Secretary, all members voted in favor. And with that, we're going to adjourn the meeting.
Time to spend.
Lock in.
Like 30 seconds.
I know.